everyone, and welcome to this week's episode of the Rogue Deck Chronicles. I am Dean, and once again, I have Devin with me.
Hey everybody, hopefully everyone had a wonderful weekend.
I know I did. I had a jam-packed weekend with pre-release. I was supposed to go to a cup, but the cup got postponed due to some construction stuff happening at the shop
Oh
last
wow.
second.
Okay.
So instead, I went to another pre-release in its place. So it was fun. I got a couple good pulls. I got a Typhlosion deck fully built, so I am happy
What?
with that.
So you pulled that many Typhlosions?
Well, it was a promo, so it wasn't hard to.
Gotcha. Okay.
So I got two kits, and they both happen to have the Typhlosions in there, and then I pulled other Typhlosions in the packs, and then yeah, and I had everything else was like pre-made, like I didn't need from the set. I really just needed the Typhlosion line and the Ethan's Adventure.
Wow. Okay.
So
That's one less
that,
thing you have to do.
oh yeah, for sure. Now I just have to build the other decks for the live stream, which y'all, if you didn't listen to last week's episode, we are doing a Destined Rivals live stream playtesting session like we did with Journey Together. We will do that on Friday, May 30th, starting at 7 p.m. If you didn't see what we did last time, we're just going to make some Destined Rival decks. We'll probably have other pre-established decks and trying to see how this set fits with more or less a competitive environment. Granted, we're playing more roguelike decks, but we will have some competitive decks made and see like how do they fare up with what's already been out there. Have a good time. Me and our friend Joe will be playing those decks. We're already talking about what we're going to be featuring, and yeah, we're excited. We can't wait to play these. Got a couple good cards. I pull a full art Mewtwo EX. So
Okay.
I may build that deck, but I didn't pull any Torrentulas. I got a couple
Oh,
Spinopses, but no Torrentulas. So I'm like,
gotcha.
what the heck?
Get the harder card.
I don't get it. But like in our one of the pre-releases we went to, I pulled the full art. Someone pulled the regular art, and someone pulled the gold art
Of the Mewtwo.
of the Mewtwo.
So they're making sure Mewtwo is very easy to get a hold of, is what Pokemon's doing.
Yeah. So I think that was like my biggest hit. Got a couple other like full arts, but I was happy with what I pulled. I just wanted Typhlosion. That's all I care about. And I saw it was a promo. I'm like, okay, this makes it a little easier
Yeah.
if I can get that promo, and I did. So I'm excited.
So, other than pre-releases, last weekend was a fairly busy weekend around the world for Pokemon as well.
Oh yeah, on top of all the pre-releases and all the cups, because in our area, in my area alone, we had 4 to 5 cups on
All last
uh,
weekend?
last weekend in the middle of pre-releases,
Jeez, okay.
and then we had 4 major tournaments globally.
Yeah.
So we had the Utrecht special event over in the Netherlands. We had Santiago Regional down in Chile. We had the Melbourne Regional down in Australia, and Thailand had their Master Ball League, which is their biggest event of the year. It's their last event, and that determines who is qualified from Thailand to go to the World Championships.
Yeah.
So yeah, pretty busy weekend, I will say.
Just a little bit.
So with that being said, we'll talk about the Utrecht, Santiago, and Melbourne. Unfortunately, we do not have the results for Thailand. I think there's a YouTube video that showed the day 2, which is just their top 32 cut. I didn't watch it. I don't really know what happened. I may do that later on. But we have 3 other tournaments where we can talk about, and Gardevoir and Dragapult just ruled the weekend again.
I mean, I think more of a story would be if they didn't. But when you
Yeah.
have the two biggest meta shares, like so them combined is a low almost it's about 40% of the meta. You expect them to win week in, week out. You expect them to take titles at regionals, especially with the players who are piloting them right
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so for Utrecht, it was won by Joe Wagner from Germany, and he was the Dragapult player. And that was actually a Dragapult mirror
Yep.
with Alberto Conti being the other finalists. This one, I would say it's a straightforward like slow pult list, but I like one new inclusion in this list. I want to see if you can see what's different compared to the other Dragapult list, Devin.
You talking about the Maractus?
Yeah. Like I've
It's
seen the Genesect before, but I've never seen the Maractus.
oh,
But
the
it
Maractus.
makes so much sense.
I mean, it's a corner. It punishes your opponent for hitting into it. Like even if you can just keep a Pokemon in the active for one more turn, that 20 damage and anti-retreat is still super good. But the exploding needles, the 60, is just another way to put more damage counters onto the board.
Yeah, it just pairs with the Phantom Dive so well. It's only a single prizer, so if you lose it, okay, you're making your opponent go on odd prize the prize trade. And then they have to hit it. Once they get cornered, they have to hit into it, and if they can't knock it out, then you have the Monkey Dory to move the damage off move it from your side to your opponent's side.
Mm-hmm.
It just makes so much sense. I do consider this maybe the 60th card of the list.
Oh, for sure.
But I like how it plays, and the decision of him doing that it was really, really cool.
I've been seeing Maractus get added to a lot of different decks. So just a kind of a sprinkling here and there because of what we just said. You have to hit into it. If you hit into it, you give yourself 60. It's a corner Pokemon, so you're preventing your opponent from retreating. So if you play it poison or burn, you can corner and keep them stuck. So it makes sense. It's one of those cards that saw a lot of attention with the Lycanroc builds because it just helps add damage counters, but with a deck that loves spreading damage counters like Dragapult does, it makes even more sense.
Yeah, surprised that it took this long to see the inclusion, but at the same time, Dragapult is just so powerful. It didn't really need it. It's just another tech card just to have as part of the arsenal. So that was Utrecht, and then as my computer freezes.
So then we have the other major event of the weekend, which was Santiago. So Santiago was a Gardevoir Raging Bolt final with Gardevoir winning, with William Azevedo getting the title for Brazil.
And honestly, it's about time for him to get the win. He's been such a major presence in the Brazilian scene. Him and Pedro Pertusi, and seeing him actually finally get the dub is very, I think, validating. It shows like how strong of a player he really is, because everyone talks about Vinny Fernandez. Everyone talks about Silva from Peru, but he's always been in the background. He's always been consistent, and I'm glad that he finally got his chance to shine and get the first place. And it's with Gardevoir, which is different for him. He's been known as a Charizard player for a while, but with Charizard not doing well, I'm glad that he found a deck that he can enjoy, and yeah, has been able to beat Raging Bolt in the final and earn his spot to go to Worlds is really, really cool.
Yep, and then the third of the three major events was down in Australia, Melbourne. This was a Gardevoir mirror won by none other than Brent Tonneson.
Yeah, can we just make the statement that he's the best player in the world right now?
I think he's the hottest player in the world, for sure.
This season, he's the best player in the world. Like, he has probably the most CP out of everyone. This is his second major event he's won, and the other one wasn't even that long ago. Like, he is on a tear.
Yeah, this is his second major win in the last 2 months.
The one thing I wanted to kind of just highlight, too, is the amount of TPC players that went to Melbourne, which is not surprising. They always do. but 1 player from Singapore and 3 players from Japan making the top cut.
Yeah,
Which,
no.
with 2 really big name Japanese players with Daichi Shimada and Riku Nakajima. Like, those are 2 big name players going down to Australia and kind of showing them, like, yeah, like, don't mess with Japan.
Well, they do that all the like they're when Oceania had its fair share of regionals, and even when it had it international a couple years ago before it got kind of got scheduled out, the Japanese players used to go down to those Oceania regionals and use it as a testing ground before the regional got you an automatic win, automatic qualification spot. It was always an area for them to use to figure out and put their toe in the water of the meta that is outside of Japan. Because
Mhm.
the only time that both metas ever merge and become one is Worlds.
That's true, and
And
really,
there's
this is a, a meta that Japan never had,
yep,
and our Destined Rival set will be a meta that Japan will never have.
yeah, and then on top of that, sometimes Worlds is a meta that Japan never even experiments with. So these
Mm-hmm.
Japanese players going to non-Japanese tournaments with the new format, obviously, if they win, they get a qualification. That's good, but I think it's them truthfully trying to test and learn and figure out what the rest of the world is thinking with the cards, so that way they can, if they're world qualifiers or world qualifier want to, like they're up there and like they're close, they can be like, okay, this is what I need to be on the lookout for. Now, internet makes it very easy to kind of get an idea, but you never really know until you go to a tournament.
Yeah, like you can look at the data all day long, but until you're actually playing the cards in the tournament in that setting with that stress, you really won't know what it's really like. And the fact that these players can make the trip from Japan, this is the closest TPCI region to them, and they always do fairly well. Because if you scroll down the list of day 2, you'll see the same high name players like Ryuki made it. I think it looked like he was in the top 32 playing Raging Bolt. Just yeah, a lot of the same top players from Japan making out, doing well, and not saying that Australia is a easy region. This is another stacked region too. Like you have Brent Tonneson, who's arguably the number 1 player in the world currently.
Mm-hmm.
You have Agnes Johnson, who always been good. Natalie Miller, who finals at EUIC and has statistically been good. You get just, Australia's just stacked with top players as well. So this is really probably a great testing place for these Japanese players to see, okay, what is the meta like? Because I know I'm going to encounter great players.
Yeah, and Oceania has always been underrated, I think. Obviously, with Henry Brand winning the World Championship a couple years ago, it brought attention to the Australian scene. But like you said, these Australian Oceania regionals typically are lower attendance compared to the other regions. So the concentration of players is a lot more. It's a higher concentration, right? You typically what after round 3, round 4 of a regional in this area, the cream is rising from the crop. Like you're making sure that the best players playing the best players. Where at a regional like you and I would attend, it may take to round 7 before that separation starts happening among the pack. So it definitely is
Exactly.
a I wouldn't say it's a better testing ground. It's very much a convenient situation for Japanese players when Oceania gets multiple regionals every year.
Yeah. So going back to these tournaments, the same old decks have been showcased, but we want to kind of just talk about some interesting decks that made day 2.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm looking at so Utrecht. Did I go to? Yeah. So Utrecht. Psyche made another appearance in day 2, but the one deck I want to really talk about, I saw this on stream, and it was in a win-in situation too.
Mm-hmm.
And it's the basic. It's the baby Okidogi, the fighting type.
Yeah.
So it got
So
top.
it got
It
30.
got top 32.
It got 31st and 80th of the same 60 from 2 players in
Yeah.
day 2.
So they obviously worked together on this. But I find this very interesting because like we've seen Okidogi before, but this is more of an Okidogi box than pure like contrary on the Okidogi. Because you do have 3 of those cards, but then you play a 2/2 line of the Scizor, which makes perfect sense because the amount of meta decks that have tons of ability Pokemon, it's like a feasting ground for the Scizor.
Yeah, I mean, the Scizor is 140 HP, stage 1 Pokemon with a punishing Scissors attack, 10, and then plus another 50 for each of your opponent's Pokemon that has an ability in play. So if they have 4 Pokemon in play with an ability, which is very reasonable nowadays, that's 210.
Mm-hmm.
And if they have 5, that's 260. And that's not counting the fact that you are running 2 Monkey Dory, so you don't have to hit magic numbers with Scizor. You just have to clean up with Scizor.
Exactly, yeah. And I remember watching this game on the stream, and it was this Okidogi deck going against Future Box, and I'm watching this. I'm like, man, this is a hard battle for Future Box because you either have to deal with the Okidogi, which hits all your Pokemon for weakness except for your Iron Leaves EX,
Mm-hmm.
or if you fill up your bench too much with your main Pokemon, you have to deal with that Scizor, which can one-shot almost everything you have because all your Pokemon have abilities.
Yeah.
So it was a very interesting like back and forth too. And this is a pure single prize deck, except for the one Fezandipiti EX and the Dunsparce EX. That's it. Everything else is pure single prize.
And then the Dunsparce EX does almost the same thing that Scizor does, but it focuses on EX Pokemon instead of abilities. So if your opponent runs a whole bunch of EX Pokemon without abilities, then the Dunsparce, for one color's energy, can clean up as well. So it makes a lot of sense to have that in there, especially if you're running the baby Dudunsparce as your draw engine.
Yeah, so I saw this. I'm glad he did very well at this tournament. Going to the other decks for day 2, everything else, like I said, is more or less like the same old stuff you expect.
Mm-hmm.
Another Blissey made day 2, got 34th, so just behind that Okidogi.
Blissey made appearances in all 3 tournaments, like in day 2. That
Ooh, this
was
Blissey is very interesting. I didn't get a chance to look at it yet, but it plays a Scorch.
which
I'm reading it right now. Billowing Heat Wave, 130, and you do 30 to each of your bench Pokemon. Okay, and it plays Monkey Dory. Okay,
so there's a synergy right there. You find different ways to power up damage to kind of get all that done, which makes sense. Like in this day and age, I think we talked about Monkey Dory's power. It's if you don't think your opponent can put damage on your board, you're going to do it for them.
Oh yeah.
So it makes sense.
So that was interesting. I didn't really see that. I just assumed it was a regular Blissey deck. So that was actually really, really cool. But for Utrecht, Devin, do you really see anything else that like sticks out to you?
Not really. I mean, the Okidogi stuck out to me. Like I said, I looked at all 3 tournaments. And I saw like a splash of Blissey everywhere. A Hydreigon made day 2, which as much as I know that deck has a ceiling, I'm always excited when I see that card make that deck do fairly well.
Mm-hmm.
But generally, it's like you said, it's the who's of a meta profile in Europe with a sprinkling of some creativity.
I will say I'm surprised seeing the downfall of Archaladon. It started so highly, and now it's only like 2 players at Utrecht made day 2 with it.
I'm really surprised that Poison Archaladon deck hasn't really taken off as much as we thought it would. Like you were super high on it in the beginning of this format, and it just hasn't caught on. Maybe it's just because other players are trying to play other things, but I think it's becoming an underrated deck.
I played it. It's just the damage output. Because you're only doing 220. If you're going the poison route, you're only doing 260. So you're not one-shotting any of the major players right now. Because a lot of the main decks play stage 2. So you're not one-shotting Gardevoir. You're not one-shotting the Dragapult. And they can one-shot you. If not, they can find a way to take you out so easily.
Yeah.
It's just not a favorable prize trade, unfortunately, unless you can find another way to do it. Because even if you play with the Relicanth, okay, they hit you for 200, you're only doing 280. Unless you're playing Poison, then you can probably hit up to the 320 mark, but then you're putting more damage on you, making it easier for you to get knocked out. So it's... I can see why it's on the downfall. I was, like I said, I was hype on it, but as more I played it, it slowly went out of favor for me.
Yeah, no, I get it. And then in Santiago, a deck that you were very interested on when it made the list is this Great Tusk Mill that made 16th.
Not that it made day 2, it got top 16.
Yeah. But, I mean, it's what you would expect out of a mill archetype. And it's a mill archetype, not a control archetype. It's straight mill.
Yeah, it's straight up mill.
So, like the land collapse, the Mimikyu, you have the Dunsparce engine to kind of just feed yourself. So it does very well. The fact that it got 16th, I think it probably lucked out on a lot of matchups, especially with the Mimikyu. Because if you see everything around it, like you're looking at the top 16, top 32, you're just seeing EXs all over the place. So that Mimikyu was putting in a lot of heavy lifting.
Yeah, for sure. Because if you look at the deck list, it's not playing any Psychic Energy, so that Mimikyu is not attacking. It's there purely just to stall out. And this list is a mixture of mill, which the primary purpose is mill, you can tell, but it's also disruption. So he plays the Zeroka Machinations to get their opponent's hand size down. You play the handheld fan to move the energy around. So it's a mixture of mill and like kind of player disruption, hand disruption. And with this format, I think that's very underrated because no one's really expecting to lose everything that they can play with. Like, okay, you're expecting the Iono, but you're going to get cards that you can do something with. And then this Great Tusk Mill deck kind of like laughs in their face, like, no, I'm not going to make you do that either.
Yeah, I mean, it runs a lot of, like you said, runs a lot of disruption, crushing hammers. It runs redeemable ticket. It has the neutralization zone stadium. So it definitely is a deck that was, I think it was a good meta call by a player that practiced it. And knowing that there was 3 major tournaments, the player pool probably was a little bit more diluted than normal. So it was definitely a good call on a good weekend for sure.
Yeah, I always like this deck, so seeing it actually make day 2 and not just make day 2, but do really well in day 2, it warms my heart.
Yes, this deck was the first deck profiled on the channel, so
yeah, one of the first. But other than that, yeah, nothing's really sticking out to me. It's the same who's who that we've been talking about over and over again. Let's go to Australia and see if anyone did anything unique there.
I mean, another Slowking made day 2. There was this Tyranitar list.
This one's interesting.
That one caught our eyes when we were talking about it. So this is the Tyranitar from Journey Together. It is a Stage 2 Dark Pokemon, 190 HP. The Daunting Gaze, as it was showcased during the Sargor video, as long as this Pokemon's in the X spot, your opponent can't play any items for their hand. And then you just do Cranking Stomp for 150, which also discards the top 2 cards of your opponent's deck. So you run that with the Dracolock line. You don't make it all the way up to Dragapult. You just use Dracolock to just kind of get you set up. And then early game Badoo, mid to late game Tyranitar, you're item locking your opponent for every single turn of the game. And then you have reversal energy because you don't run EXs, so everything's live with the reversal energy.
I like the Dreepy Dracolock line because one, it helps you turn through your deck, but with how heavy the Dragapult metagame is, I feel like it can be a nice like bait. So you set that up, they think you're playing Dragapult, and then they're knocking out your GPs, your Dracocks all day long, and leaving your Trinitar alone, and all of a sudden you're like item locking them, you're having them you're milling them out too, and you're actually that's what's actually doing the damage, not the Draclock. So you're kind of playing that bait and switch.
Yeah, and then this runs a Pokemon League headquarters, which punishes basic decks, makes them have to use more energy to attack. It runs a Calamitous Wasteland. The retreat cost for non-fighting Pokemon is increased by 1, but your Pupitar and your Larvitar are fighting Pokemon, so they're not affected. And then obviously when the Tyranitar is in the active, you don't want to retreat the Tyranitar, so that doesn't matter anymore. So it's
Yeah.
very much an intentional, very much a throw it up and make your opponent have to handle it type of deck, and I think that's awesome.
And obviously, no one's prepared for this because we never seen this deck in our lives. So,
and it's $20.
Yeah,
it is a cheap deck. You can go out and put this whole thing together for $20. That's
this just shows that you don't need to spend a lot of money to play competitive Pokemon.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And then the only other deck that caught my eye for Melbourne was a Slowking. It's a standard Slowking deck. It got top 70, so it's. I mean, when you're looking at Melbourne, 5 of the top 6 were Gardevoir. So it definitely was not a area where a lot of creativity was going to show up on the top end tables. But toward the other parts of it, you could see it in other areas of the tournament.
Yeah, absolutely. But yeah, those were the 3 TBC or TPCI regionals. As we mentioned, Thailand had their Master Ball League, which is their biggest tournament of the year. We don't have those results. We probably won't see those for a while, if we do. But yeah, it's very busy weekend with Pokemon. Think there's a regional this upcoming weekend, if I'm not mistaken, in Portland. Is that this week or next weekend?
This weekend is Portland, and also Indonesia's Master Ball League, and a special event in South Africa.
Oh, okay. So another stacked weekend for Pokemon. So we'll see who prevails in those tournaments. Obviously, we'll be paying attention to Portland since that is in our region of North America. But don't get me wrong, the South African and Middle East region, there's a lot of great players over there too. Like you have Raz Wolpe, who made top 4 at Worlds last year from Israel. There's a lot of good players that live in that region too, so I'm excited to see how they do in another one of their special events.
Yeah, absolutely. So, alrighty.
So with that being said, we looked at decks that play pretty consistent cards, and me and Devin were talking. I think we need to do another iteration of Rogue on Trial, and with this week specifically talking about items and tool cards.
Yeah, I think when we talked about the Pokemon, we talked about cards, a Pokemon that we think were overrated, overvalued, and then we talked about some cards that really should get more attention. And with the items, you and I were talking about how we wanted to bring the same concept to this conversation, but some of the cards that we brought up as the potential overvalued or overemphasized, right? Well, let's be honest, you kind of need them.
Yeah.
Like, I think when it comes to items and tool cards, we wanted to just be a little more positive and a little more of a hype man for some of these cards that we identified as you should think about these more when you're building your deck lists, because they do have a lot of value that maybe a standard 60 of a net deck may have. Like when you're building your list, maybe you need to consider these based on different meta calls and different strategies your deck is trying to do. So the first
Mhm.
card I wanted to bring up is a card that I think should have seen a lot more play by now, and that is Counter Game.
Yeah, it's interesting because Pokemon made a statement saying they want to bring back the the comeback mechanic, and they've started printing cards that do that. And counter game is one of those cards that just takes advantage of being from behind, doing helping get your attacks online when you need to, but no one's really playing it. Like, and I think part of that is that there's a lot more energy acceleration compared to other formats.
Mm-hmm.
So the need for counter gain is much less. But also, there's a lot more colored energy requirements where
Yes.
with counter gain, you have to have that colorless energy cost for it to really be or really be have to be beneficial. You can't use it if you have any colored energy requirements.
Yeah, it's not Sparkling Crystal where it just knocks off anything. It has that the attack that you're focusing on has to have a colorless attack in it. And the first time Counter Game was played, it was in a format that had a lot of tech cards that had double colorless attack costs.
Mm-hmm.
In the same format, the double colorless energy existed on top of that, so it made those DCE attackers be more viable in more decks. So that's why I have such a fond memory of Counter Game, because I remember when it was a true equalizer. It was a part of the comeback mechanics. It allowed a lot more cards to be viable in decks where they could be used as tech attackers or even just straight out counters. Like that's your one counter for a matchup. So like you said, I think the biggest drawback right now is there's a lot of attack Pokemon that do not have a colorless attack cost in their attacks. So counter game
Mm-hmm.
can't be utilized as well because it's just not it has no function.
Yeah, but if I will say if you're building a deck and there's some colorless attacker or attack cost in your attacker, I would I would suggest maybe adding a one of in there just for an easy like closer or something.
Mm-hmm.
A good example of a deck that uses this a lot now is actually Hydreigon, as Devin mentioned earlier. When we're going through decks, it has that weird energy cost, but if because of how high the HP is, you put in the counter game, attach a Neo upper energy to it, and do one other regular energy attachment, and you're doing the obsidian, you're doing the the crashing headbutt. Like you have a lot more options, and that is a very strong Terra Pokemon to deal with, and counter game just makes it so much better.
Yeah, I would say the only other time I would say counter game probably shouldn't be considered for your deck is if you have an attack that needs to have a certain condition met. Like
Mm-hmm.
Wailord, it's all colorless attack. Yes, that's great. But counter game won't really help Wailord because you want energy on Wailord. You want to scale your attack up. Um,
Exactly.
so you just
So
have to be very cautious on that. I would say if you plan on playing a counter catcher, see if your deck can handle a counter game.
exactly, I agree with that. And then the next card we want to talk about is another tool card, and it's Gravity Gemstone. And I can see why people don't play this,
Yes.
but I feel like the benefit of it outweighs the negative aspect of the card. So Devin, why don't you tell us what Gravity Gemstone does, and we can kind of go from there on the conversation.
Yeah, so part of Gravity Gemstone, you have to understand the mechanics of retreat first and foremost before we talk about the card does, right? So
Mm-hmm.
when a Pokemon card has a retreat cost, the retreat cost is a firm number, typically between 0 and 5. There are cards out there that will use the term free retreat. So when a card affects another card and gives that free retreat, effectively the card that has the free retreat is an infinity zero. It isn't a zero that can be added, it's an infinity zero. So if free retreat is in play, you cannot make the number higher than what free retreat is. Free retreat will always trump it because even if you add 1 to infinity zero, the number is always going to go drop back down.
Mm-hmm.
So I want to put that out there. And just for more clarity, we're talking about how Latias affects basic Pokemon.
Yeah.
So, but Gravity Gemstone is a tool card. As long as Pokemon is attached to the active Pokemon, the retreat cost of both active is one colorless more. So, if you attach a Gravity Gemstone to your active Pokemon, both active Pokemon's retreat is +1. If you have a Latias in your active, you still have free retreat.
Mm-hmm.
Your opponent does not, unless they have a Latias on their side of the board.
Or another effect that makes the Infinity Zero retreat cost. Yeah.
Yes. So I think this card could potentially be seen in more decks that utilize poison, that utilize burn, or utilize a mechanic that you want to make sure your opponent's active stays in the active for one turn because of an effect that happens the next turn.
Yeah, I can see that. I think corner is a very good way to do that because it's an attack and you can't prevent that. But preventing retreating, especially on a Pokemon that is meant to only stay on the bench and no way to move it back and forth, it can be detrimental to your opponent. I know playing the poison package myself a lot. I really rely on that Latias when I play that Brute Bonnet because that Brute Bonnet has a 3 retreat cost. If this gets any active and there's a Gravity Gemstone, that turns into a 4 retreat cost. And there's no way I'm going to be able to retreat that unless I have the Latias. So you can play around your opponent's board state and really like go after that trap strategy.
Yeah. Or you have to force your opponent to use a hard switch. And that's a
Exactly.
resource that they don't want to. There's a resource they're using that they don't want to use in that moment if they want to try to just keep pace. Because you could utilize Gravity Gemstone as a very much of a slowdown piece where you are going to just slow your opponent down while you set up your bench. And then when you're ready to strike, you will strike.
Exactly. And right now there's only like 2 really good switching cards. One being Switch and the other being Prime Catcher. So if your opponent's ace spec isn't Prime Catcher, you are sticking them to using Switch only. And honestly, not a lot of decks are playing that card anymore.
Yeah. And then the only other switching card really are supporters. And not a
Exactly.
lot of decks run support based switch. So
Yeah, the only one I can really think of is Surfer. And then coming up, we have Giovanni,
yeah.
or Team Rocket's Giovanni. But that's only for a Team Rocket deck. So knowing your opponent's strategy and how they run their deck, you can really take advantage of this tool card in your deck and really hurt your opponent.
Mm-hmm. So but if you have no way to really take advantage of that mechanic, I wouldn't really put this in here. If you're running Latias, I would run Gravity Gemstone if you have space for tool cards. I would.
Mm-hmm. Actually, I think this will pair really well with Genesect because if you play the Latias, put the Genesect in your list. It activates the ability which shuts down your opponent playing ace specs, and you still can prevent them from switching, but you can free retreat yourself.
Yeah, absolutely. So there's just those convoluted combinations that can happen that I think can in the right deck can be very powerful.
Exactly. And then I think the last tool card that we have on the list before we go to items, this one is one I nominated, which is Lucky Helmet. So what Lucky Helmet does if the Pokemon card is attached to is in the active spot and is damaged from an attack, you draw 2 cards. That's it. You don't have to get knocked out. You just have to be active, and the tool card has to be attached to it. And that's an easy draw 2 before you even draw for turn.
Yeah. And honestly, with in a format that doesn't have a lot, if any, tool disruption, this is not bad to have in a 1 or 2 of spot in a deck that you're kind of struggling to have draw in general.
Yeah, a good example of this is Tord Recklif's list that he played at Aichi. He he did the Team Rocket's Mewtwo EX in that format, and he added 2 lucky helmets because that deck tends not to have a lot of draw, but is really tanky. That Mewtwo EX is 280 HP. It's not getting one-shotted very easily. So if you can attach the lucky helmet to the Mewtwo, you're drawing 2 cards, if not 4, because it even procs even if you get knocked out as well, because you're taking damage.
Yep.
So you're getting more access to resources. Is it the best tool card compared to what's out there? No, but if you have space to play something and you need to draw, I think Lucky Helmet's a really good option for you.
No, absolutely. We saw a very similar mechanic be exploited with Blissey, with the gift energy and the lucky energy. So this being in a format, like we said, not any tool removal. Once it's on, it's on. So you're making your opponent have to deal with it. And if their version of dealing with it is not attacking into it, you still win. It's an ultimate win-win card, because you don't ever get into a spot where you don't want it to be in the active unless you are, oh crap, don't attack me because I draw 2, I deck out. But you wouldn't really try to put yourself in that position at that point.
Yeah. So those are the tool cards that we wanted to talk about. Those are definitely some underrated cards that Dev and I we consider putting in some of our decks. But now we're going to go in some of the items, and I think first there's a couple of Pokemon search that we want to talk about that people are not really using a lot lately.
Yeah, and don't get me wrong. When the next couple of cards that we're talking about, we're not saying these are straight replacements of the established tools of Pokemon search we have. These are not straight up better than Ultra Ball, Nest Ball, and Buddy-Buddy Poffin. We want to put that out there. However, they can be used in certain decks depending on what you are looking for. To me, if you're playing an evolution deck and your only way to search evolution cards is through Ultra Ball, I think you can try to find Pokemon search with maybe a little bit of conditional downside that can still help you. And with that being said, we're going to be talking about Great Ball and Dusk Ball. So Great Ball and Dusk Ball pretty much do the same thing, just on 2 different ends of the deck. So Great Ball is look at the top 7 cards of your deck. If you see a Pokemon, you may reveal it, put that into your hand, shuffle the rest of your deck. Dusk Ball is look at the bottom 7 cards of your deck. See a Pokemon, reveal it, put it in your hand, shuffle the rest into your deck. So Dean and I were talking. He asked me, why Dusk Ball? I said, is there any difference between looking at the top 7 and the bottom 7? And it's like, no.
Nope. Especially with Iono.
Especially with Iono, exactly. If you're putting cards from your hand to the bottom of your deck, you already know what's on the bottom of your deck. So if you know you drew a Dusk Ball after you just got Iono, and you knew you had Pokemon in hand, you know you're going to hit. At least with Great Ball, it's a little bit of randomness, but if you run enough evolution pieces, the Great Ball is going to hit.
Yeah, and one thing I really like about Dusk Ball is that a lot of times you get Iono when you get a piece that you can't play right away, but you want it for next turn. And then, of course, you get Iono and you're like, oh, and you find it again. But if you play the Dusk Ball pieces, you can get that right away. So no matter what, you have that missing that Pokemon you need for next turn.
Absolutely.
Is it more risky? Yes, because you have to draw into the Dusk Ball again. There's really no easy way to get this card unless you play Arven, and then that's your supporter for turn.
But you're already shuffling your deck. You're shuffling your deck after you Arven anyway, so you can't guarantee what's on the bottom of the deck anyway. But for decks that run thick evolutionary lines, we're talking the decks that run the 3/3/3s, the 2/2/2s, or multiple evolutionary lines, then I think a Dusk Ball, Great Ball could be your friend because it helps you find pieces without having to discard. Nest Ball only gives you the basic, so you don't get to find the evolutions those way. So I think it's another way to help you search for your your evolutionary pieces, especially those middle stages that seem to be harder to find. That way, if you're not a rare candy deck or rare candy reliant deck, you can try to at least slowly build your board up through actually evolving the hard way.
Exactly. And put it in perspective, if one of the most recent broken decks that we've had in the last couple years, Lugia, if they play Great Ball, it may be a decent card to consider. I remember you play Great Ball, Mezagoza, Ultra Ball, you play every Pokemon Surge so you can get what you need. And if they thought that was a valuable card, I think it's something we should consider when we build our decks.
Exactly. And then the
So,
go ahead.
I was gonna say one other Pokemon Search card to talk about before we go into our last couple is this is really more for this format specifically. Once we get out of the next couple sets, it's not going to be seen as much. But I want to mention Terra Ball or Terra Orb.
Yes. No. When you put that on the list, I go. It's great for the format we're in right now.
Mm-hmm.
It's good for maybe 1 year from time of recording, but it's not going to be useful once we get beyond this Terra stage.
Exactly. And I get it, Nest Ball, Ultra Ball, they're much better at what they do. But being in such Terra heavy format right now, and really, if you look at the top decks, a good majority of them play Terra Pokemon.
Yeah.
And this is an easy way to get those into play.
Yeah, it's search your deck for a Terra Pokemon, put it in your hand. No drawback. The only drawback is that it has to be a Terra Pokemon, but you wouldn't be running that card if you didn't have it in your deck.
Exactly. So don't think that you should put this in the GLC deck. It will legit be Quick Ball and Ultra Ball fodder, and that's it.
Uh-huh.
But in standard format right now, if you want to play a Dragapult, you can add this in there and no one will bat an eye. You want to play Charizard, this is another great deck that you can add Terra Orb to. Oh, you want to try your hand at the new Eevee Flareon box? Go for it. This is another great way to get your Flareon or Sylveon out.
Yep.
Like, there's so many decks that play Terra Pokemon. Even the Mamoswine deck that we featured, I've been seeing a lot of lists that have been playing the Flygon.
Mm-hmm.
Flygon EX is another Terra Pokemon. So it's serving a lot of purpose, as we said, for right now, because the card was made for this format. It wasn't really made for future formats unless Terra Pokemon become very popular and expanded. But even then, think about it. I just went to Expanded Night at my local shop. One of the top decks right now is Regidrago V-Star. Terra Orb, get your Dragapult. Quick Ball away. Now you have Dragapult in your discard.
Yeah. No, it's a, like you said, it's pigeonholed within the meta and the sets it was printed in. But it doesn't mean it's not a good card.
Absolutely.
These in-game mechanics are in-game mechanics, and they will evolve into the TCG. Every single game has those mechanics. And eventually it will come back. Megas are coming back. We never thought Megas would come back after X and Y. So we just have to wait and see what happens and then kind of go from there. And anytime you can search for a Pokemon, no drawback, no condition. Or yes, there is a condition, it has to be a Terra. But there's no drawback. You search your deck, and if you fail, you fail. If you get it, you get it. Never a bad card in my head.
Exactly. I think it's underutilized in this format right now, especially on the rise of some of these decks. If you want to be unique, I would include it. Like we said, there's no drawback to it. If you're already playing those cards in your deck, just do it. You're already doing it. You're already playing those cards.
Mm-hmm.
So, and then the last, I would say, Pokemon Surge-esque card that we want to talk about is Redeemable Ticket. So, it is known as the Hisuian Heavy Ball replacement, but it's much more than that, though. So what? Go ahead.
Yeah, so the Redeemable Ticket is a trainer card that reads, count your prize cards, shuffle them, and then put them on the bottom of your deck. sounds familiar. We talked about putting cards at the bottom of your deck mechanic already with another card we wanted to highlight. Then take that many cards from the top of your deck and put them face down as your prizes. So you will never really know what cards you're putting back into your deck and what cards you're putting back going into your prizes. That is a potential 12-card swing that you will not be able to know unless you are really good at memorizing your deck lists. But it's really good after you do your first search and realize your one of Blood Moon or Saluna is prized. Or your only middle stage of your stage 2 is prized. You get to put that back in your deck and be able to search and be able to do it. You don't have to rely purely on rare candies for the match. It's really good at putting cards that you went, oh crap, it's prized, back into your deck.
Exactly. And like right now, like I'm fooling around with the Typhlosion deck, and I really need those Ethan's Adventure. And I put in a one of redeemable ticket in my list for this reason, because if you could thin out your deck enough to where when you play redeemable ticket, you can get those missing pieces, and then putting, I wouldn't say bad cards, but maybe cards you don't really need right now or can survive not playing, grabbing what you need and then continue playing.
Mm-hmm.
It's really good not just for Pokemon search, but anything where you need certain pieces to get your combo going. Because as the more, I would say more competitive, more complex, advanced play you get into, the more pieces you need to get those combos, and you need cards like this to really rely on getting those going.
Also, this is a hot take and a very interesting mindset. So the safest spot a card can be is in the prizes. I know that sounds weird. But cards in your deck can be discarded. Cards from your hand can be discarded. Cards in play can be discarded. We don't run any cards right now that makes your opponent move a prize to where it cannot be played.
That's true, yeah.
So if you want to protect a resource and generally know where it is, obviously there's still a little bit of randomization to where your prizes are. But if you play this with 4 prizes, you have a 1 in 4 shot of knowing where that card is.
Mm-hmm.
And then you can draw it from a knockout, and then it gets put into your hand, and hopefully your opponent has less resources to disrupt that hand. So I know it sounds weird to say the safest spot a card can be is in the prizes, but the only way to get a prize is to get a knockout. So if you're looking for a resource and you know a resource is in your prizes, then you can map your way to getting those. And more times than not, you're going to get it within a reasonable amount of time.
Yeah, and I think that's a good point to bring up, as we just talked about Great Tusk gaining that top 16 in Santiago, because that deck has mill, so mill your cards from your deck to your discard. Xerosic Machination, discard your hand into the discard. And some of them will play like a company flute or something to fill out your bench to where you can't play cards that you want to put on your bench.
Mm-hmm.
And the only area that is not affected by that deck is the prizes. You can't manipulate your opponent's prizes.
Yeah.
So it's very interesting you brought that up, especially when we just had a deck that did fairly well at a major event that goes against that strategy that you're talking about.
Yeah. And granted, what I'm saying isn't probably a strategy that I would tell people, oh yeah, protect your prizes, manipulate your prizes. By no means is that what I'm trying to say. What I'm really trying to get at is this redeemable ticket can get a card that you're looking for into where you can protect it a little bit longer, but also at the same time get a card that you know you need back to where you can get it.
Mm-hmm.
So.
And really, I think a nice sneaky combo is that if you play Academy at night, put the top card onto your deck and then use redeemable ticket. As long as you know where you put that top card, you know what prize to get.
I think you're supposed to randomize them, but I'm not 100% sure how that would go. It doesn't say shuffle
them, put them bottom, then take that many cards from the top of your deck and place them face down as your prize cards. You can place them any way you want.
So yeah, so if you know what's on the top of your deck, put it prizes and you know exactly where it is.
Yeah, but in standard, there's only one way I can think of is Academy at Night. I'm not sure if that's going to be the worth of it, but it's like say like, oh, I need to save my ace spec that way it doesn't get milled or discarded in any way. Put that on top, make that prize number one, grab it, and then you're good for when you need it.
Yeah.
So just something to think of. Not saying it's the best combo in the world, but as we build decks, as we want to do unique strategies, that is a combo that you could try out and see how it works.
Yeah, absolutely. And then the last two cards we want to talk about are energy-based cards. So the first one is Letter of Encouragement. So Letter of Encouragement is a trainer card. You can use this only if any of your Pokemon were knocked out during your opponent's last turn. Now, it doesn't say knocked out from damaged. So if it was knocked out during your opponent's last turn, you can proc this card. So Dusknoir can proc this card. Moving damage encounters with Iron Valiant can proc this card. It just has to happen during the turn. It can't happen during checkup, it can happen during the turn, but it doesn't have to be an attack.
Exactly.
So search your deck for up to 3 basic cards, basic energy cards, reveal them, put them in your hand, shuffle your deck. There are certain decks that really would love this card.
Yeah.
And there's certain decks that can just take advantage of it even if it's not take 3.
Yeah, like we played a deck on this channel with the Iono's deck where your single prize deck, you're going to get knocked out every single turn. You play the Letter of Encouragement, you grab the 3 lightning energy, and then you just attach them with Iono's Belly Bolt. It's a super easy combo to pull off. I think this is not necessarily a must in single prize decks, but I think those are the type of decks that can take advantage of this card very easily.
Yeah, if it's a single prize basic energy deck, this card can be utilized more often than not. This definitely feels like an Earthen Vessel, but at home. It definitely feels like a slight downgrade to Earthen Vessel, but I think in the right archetype, it can be definitely better than Earthen Vessel.
Well, you get more energy than Earthen Vessel.
Yes, you absolutely
do. You get 3 energy versus 2, and the only thing is you have to get knocked out. You don't have to, with Earthen Vessel, you have to card something, which for a lot of decks is not an issue, but if you're late game and you need every card in your hand, but you need to get that energy, you're sacrificing a crucial card just so you may be able to get energy to attack. Versus this card, all you have to do is get knocked out last turn, and then if you have in hand, you can just play it and grab energy, and then use whatever card you have in hand as well.
Absolutely. No, I think in certain archetypes, this is definitely better. If you were thinking about putting Earthen Vessel in single prize decks, I would encourage this Letter of Encouragement and make it a consideration switch for sure.
Exactly. And as we talk about getting energy into play, the next card we want to talk about is getting energy out of play in the form of an Enhanced Hammer. And I know at first I was questioning Devin. I'm like, why Enhanced Hammer? No one's really playing special energy. And then he said 3 words to me: Team Rocket's energy.
Yes. This is very much a future consideration at time of recording. This is very much a prediction of Team Rocket just going to... Destined Rivals is going to be a Team Rocket set. And Team Rocket's energy is the crutch of almost all those Team Rocket archetypes anyway. There's so many different cards that need to have awkward energy costs, or as straight out says, if this card has Team Rocket's energy attached to it. So Enhanced Hammer is if it's a special energy, goodbye. I've played in formats where Enhanced Hammers were 4-ofs because special energy was everywhere. This format is very much more basic energy, but there are still special energies out there and they are thriving. Loomis energies, the A-Spec energies, Spike energies. There's plenty of special energy out there where Enhanced Hammer can survive in a non-rocket meta for sure.
Oh, yeah.
And even if you want to take it kind of another step toward this, Crushing Hammer can very much be in this conversation, even though Crushing Hammer is a coin flip. I think Energy Denial is not utilized as much as it could But I think a lot of people are just take a step back when they hear and see the line flip a coin.
It's actually funny. In my local shop's Discord, we were actually having that conversation today. It was like, I'm never taking Crushing Hammer to a cup again. I went 2 out of 9. And I'm like, it's powerful if you hit the heads.
Yeah, if you were to win 7 out of 9, you would have been praising the card.
Yeah. So it's really interesting that we're saying like, yeah, when people take a step back because you have to flip a coin, but Pokemon does that to add. Yeah, you have to add variability. You can't make a card that broken. Like, play this card, discard an energy. Well, then everyone will be playing 4-ofs, and then it just won't be a fun game if everyone's getting rid of their energies left and right.
Yeah.
So they have to do that to make it fair to a point.
Yeah, I understand. No, and that's why Crushing Hammer's seen ebbs and flows of success and usage for sure.
Mm-hmm.
Alrighty.
So that's our plea, our justification of why you should include some of these cards when you build your next rogue decks. Obviously, take everything we say with a grain of salt. Not every card is meant to be played in your deck. Take into consideration the strategy you're trying to do, how it fits in there. If you're not playing an energy flood deck, isn't for you. If you have plenty of draw support, maybe you can do something else other than Lucky Helmet. You have to think about like how your deck is made. But if you want to throw your opponent off guard for a little bit, I think these are some really good options to do that for.
Absolutely. This every time you have your opponent have to read the card you're playing, you gain just a little bit of an advantage, in my opinion.
Mm-hmm. Exactly.
Alrighty. So, everything being said, let's now talk about this week's Rogue Deck of the Week, Dean. And this week, this is your deck. You're putting this together, so why don't you introduce it to everyone?
Yeah, so we were talking about like what Journey Together Pokemon have we not really mentioned, and it reminded me of when we did the ETB opening on the live stream with Joe, and he pulled that special illustration rare Salamence EX, and we were both excited. I know he got a pretty penny for that card, but no one has really talked about it. I've seen some videos on it, and instead of like trying to find okay what got better with Journey Together, let's focus on the cards that they printed in Journey Together, and Salmon EX we just forgot about. So I'm like, okay, let's see how we can make this work. And I paired it with the Blaziken. So I think that these two cards go really well with each other. So Salmon EX is a stage 2 dragon type Pokemon. It has 2 attacks for a fire double colorless. It has the wide blast attack where you do 50 to all of your opponent's bench Pokemon. This is 50 damage, not damage counters, so that is important. And then for a fire, water, and 2 colorless energy, it has a dragon impact attack where you do 300 damage, but then you have to discard 2 energy from this Pokemon. Well, that typically isn't an issue because we play it with the Blaziken EX, which we have featured in multiple videos here, but for those who need a refresher, has a Seething Spirit ability where you can attach an energy from your discard to any of your Pokemon once per turn. So the goal is to have 1 or 2 into play, and then you just attach the energy back onto the Salmon EX, and then you can either do the Dragon Impact attack again because you hit for 300 damage. You can one-shot a lot of Pokemon that way, or you can do the setup with the Wide Blast. So I feel like those 2 cards play really well with each other, especially with the energy discard and attaching. That way you can get multiple energy in play. The draw engine for this deck is the Dunsparce. So I do play a 2-2-1 line. So I play 2 Dunsparce, 2 Dudunsparce with a runaway draw, and 1 Dudunsparce EX because I need an answer to Cornerstone Orgapon, and this is the best option with this deck.
Yeah, no, it makes sense.
And yeah. And then the last Pokemon to talk about, I play one of Fezandipiti. It's a staple in every deck.
Yeah, it's the draw 3 after a knockout. even if you're only doing it 1 to 2 times a game, it's still 6 cards you're seeing at a position where you really would want to see more.
Hmm.
Um, as much as I'm usually not a player that likes to spend money on a card, Fezandipiti has more than proven its value.
Oh, absolutely. I was actually talking to Joe the other day, and it's like, is that card still $15? It still is, but it's one of those cards that it's the value is worth it.
Hmm.
It's playable in every deck, so really, if you just play one deck at a time, you just need one,
Yeah.
and that $15 is going to stretch you for years.
Hmm. So
So back to the list. Honestly, the list is pretty standard. I play 3 Ultra Ball, 2 Earthen Vessel, 2 Boss, 3 Rare Candy. I played 3 because I had to cut something in this deck, and I feel like with 3 Rare Candy, you're getting what you need pretty good. Especially since I play 2 Technical Machine Evolution,
yeah,
and then one card I put in here I thought would be really nice is 1 Technical Machine Devolution. And I did
that
that because we are somewhat of a spread deck. So if you can get Y Blast out a couple times, you can do the Devolution and try to catch those rare candy decks and get some easy prizes that way.
not even rare candy decks. Like if you get 2 Y blasts out, that's 100 damage onto a Pokemon. That usually takes out most stage ones.
Yeah, that is true. So I thought that would be a nice play if you need it. Everything else is pretty standard. I play Arvens, Ionos, 1 Night Stretcher. I wish I had more, but I needed the space for other things. 2 Crispins, just because we are dealing with a dragon energy or dragon Pokemon that has weird energy costs. Same issue as a Terra Pokemon, they just have weird multiple energies. So I put a couple Crispins in, 1 Research just to draw, 3 Buddy-Buddies because the Bagons and the Torchics and the Dunsparces are all under 70 HP. And then my A spec of choice is Precious Trolley, just because I really value the the opening Arven, get Precious Trolley, TM Evolution, get your board set up, and then evolve and try to get your stage ones and play as quickly as possible. Um, I feel like if you play Secret Box, that could be a good option. Prime Catcher can always be a good option. But I feel like with the stage 2 decks, Precious Trolley is the better A spec no matter what.
Yeah, no, I agree. Those setup decks definitely need a whiteboard, and you need to get very aggressive with that. And Pressure Trolley helps you manage your resources for more mid to late game search. That it can be more vertical than horizontal.
Exactly. And then I play 2 Artisans. I like it because when you do Runaway Draw, you can do Runaway Draw, have an Artisan in play, get back that Dunsparce super easily. It's a nice way to recycle your draw with it being the Pokemon base versus item base. And you can utilize Arven a much better that way and get and cherry pick the items you really need instead of relying on the draw of those cards.
Okay. Yeah.
And then for energy, I play 3 Water and 5 Fire. More heavy on the fire because you play the Blaziken and the Salamence. Water, you really only need it for the dragon impact attack. Even though I was saying one of my games I was playtesting with, I almost attacked with Fezandipiti because there's a colorless attack cost, and you have the Blaziken. So there's options.
Yeah. It's not that's the weird part of Fezandipiti is it could always attack, but you never want to.
Yeah. It's just 100 to any Pokemon, if in the right spot, can be beneficial. It's just my other Pokemon can do it better. So,
Yeah, exactly.
but if you're in a tough situation with the Blaziken and Fez, you can attack with the Fez. Because the Blaziken does have that requirement where you can't attack next turn. So you're usually attacking and then retreating and then needing to power up another Pokemon. Yes, you have the Seethen Spirit to get the energy out of the discard, but you're not getting both energy out of the discard if you can in. So, and as you can see, I don't really have a lot of energy recycling. Actually, I have no energy recycling.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm really reliant on
Blaziken.
having as little energy in play. That way I don't waste it all up.
Yeah, no. I think this deck you Dragon Impact for the KOs, but you Wide Blast for the setups. So I definitely see that.
So, but it's a fun deck. You have the option of either being a spread deck or being a heavy hitter. You're a little bit tanky because you are a stage 2 with 320 HP on both of your main Pokemon. You have a nice answer to Cornerstone and to really heavy EX decks with the Dunsparce EX. You have a really steady, consistent draw with the Dunsparce. I think this is an overall balanced deck. It is multiple stage 2s, so consistency is mid. I don't play the Pidgeot, but it's fun. I love the games I do play, and if I do, it's not because it was a shutout. It's usually pretty close. So it's a fun deck. We'll feature this week on Friday. You'll see the games I play with this, how I handle a multiple stage 2 deck and playing with a dragon Pokemon for once in my life. It is fun. Take it out for a spin. Will I take this to a cup? No. Maybe a challenge if I feel like I want to just try something different. But it is fun on the ladder. People don't know that Salamence EX is a card unless you're playing it expanded right now. So it is definitely a fun deck to pilot.
Gotcha. And like he said, this will be the deck of the week on Friday. The episode will drop around noon Eastern on the YouTube channel if you want to watch some gameplay of it. The deck list will be in the show notes of this video and also in the description of its own video as well. So if you want to look at how we did the list, please check those areas out. But Dean, other than that, is there anything else you want to add?
There's a couple things. If you made it this far in our video and episode, please like and subscribe us on YouTube. We are on our way to getting 100 subscribers. Once we hit that goal, we will do a special Rogue Deck Tournament of Champions. We will pick some of our favorite decks that we have featured on this channel, and me and my buddies will do a mini tournament within our friend group, and we'll see which one is the best Rogue deck on this channel. So we're excited to host that for y'all once we hit that goal. Of course, next week we will be doing a live stream for Destined Rivals, as I mentioned earlier on in this episode. We're going to get about 6 to 8 decks that me and Joe will play, and we're just going to have a nice fun time playing Pokemon on the Destined Rivals release date. So please join us for that here on YouTube at 7 p.m. We'll see how late we go because we both are getting pretty old and our bedtimes are early. Welcome to adulting, people. So we'll have that next week. Please join us for that. It was fun last time we did it. Hopefully we get more people. And yeah, we just can't wait to enjoy Pokemon with y'all and celebrating Destined Rivals on a street date. But with that being said, I have nothing else. Devin, do you have anything else for the listeners?
No, I am good. I'm excited to see the Destined Rivals metagame expand, and I cannot wait to play those cards. I cannot wait for them to hit live.
Oh yeah, we have so many ideas that we want to do, especially with our alternative schedule. As we mentioned, this summer we're going to take it a little easy with the podcast. This is actually Devin and I's busy season with our jobs, but we will still do our Rogue Deck showcases every week. So every other week we'll have the podcast episode, but weekly we will have a Rogue Deck video too if we have the time, just so we can still show you what decks we're still playing with. Like, we're not taking a break from Pokemon. We just know our time is very valuable, and we want to make sure we put the best product out there, and rushing a podcast episode isn't necessarily the best for us and for you all.
Yep, absolutely.
So, with all that being said, thank you very much for listening to this week's episode of the Rogue Deck Chronicles. I'm Dean.
I'm Devin, guys. Enjoy Pokemon, and we'll see you guys later.
And have fun playing those sneaky decks.